Remind everyone, of course, that this podcast, the 415ers podcast, is coming at you 3 times a week on the Odyssey Sports Podcast Network, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Evan Giddings, Marc Grandy. You can find us on social media at eGiddings10. For Marc, at Marc Grandy. Marc with a C, Grandy with an I. Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, I don't necessarily expect him to be a different quarterback. No one should. But I also don't think he should be nearly as bad as he was against Denver for the rest of the season for some of the reasons that you just laid out. The fact that he did not have an entire normal offseason like he usually does, which also, as we found out, includes ghosting the majority of his team for about 3 months. But he is coming off of shoulder surgery. He kind of looked like it, to be honest, in his first start. And compared to, Denver's a much better defense than Seattle. He had finally a full week of practice with the ones. Even though I don't think it's fair to just expect, the Seahawks rollover, I did expect him to, at least be a little more accurate, especially in the areas that we have seen him be better at over the middle, kind of those window passes. He was just a bit off with most of his throws, although he made a couple of good ones. And this is where I want to go next. Like, I do think there is a next level for Garoppolo. Now, it's not going to be anything. He's not all of a sudden going to have a fastball, start throwing rocks all over the outside, and he's not going to be taking the top off the defense. But I do think, because everyone was killing him specifically for the 2 Debo throws, or one of which he didn't throw, and understandably so. He's got Debo wide open in the first half. And he's looking at, I think, honestly, he was looking at Kittle on that play, who was covered, and then came back over to the left. So he completely missed a wide open Debo downfield. And then later, kind of a similar play, but ran to the other side of the field where he throws it, and Debo has to just wait for a 3 flies up catch coming down on the sideline. I do think Garoppolo will be able to hit those throws as this season moves on, as he continues to get more reps, as he continues to get hopefully healthier, and the arm begins to come back. I do believe that he will be able to make those type of passes, whereas he was not for the reasons that you laid out in his first full start.
What gives you that confidence? I mean, when have we seen him consistently make those throws in stride to open receivers? Now, maybe some like the Debo one, the second Debo one, where he completed it to him, but if he puts it out in front of him, he walks in for a touchdown and said it's only a 25, 30-yard gain. I'm not sure what gives you the confidence in saying that, because the Jimmy Garoppolo that I know, that I'm used to watching, either as you laid out on that first Debo play, either doesn't see the wide open receiver, or does see him but doesn't trust his arm to throw it. I'm not sure what's worse. Or 2, does see him, does throw it, but throws it poorly. I there are times, of course, you can find examples where he put a ball on the money, 25, 30 yards down the field on the sideline, hits him in stride, and it ends up being a touchdown. The examples are certainly there, but I would say the majority of the time, something with the play goes wrong, whether it's Garoppolo's identification of the open receiver, deciding to throw, or making a poor throw. I would disagree with you there. I'm not confident that it'll get to a point where he's hitting those throws consistently. It'll probably be better than it was against Denver, but based on his history, I'm sorry, I just don't see him consistently making those throws, because I think his career suggests that he won't.
Yeah, and I'm not saying every time that a guy is open, he's going to be able to hit him. I mean,
Of course, not every time, but
we didn't see Trey Lance do that either. I mean, everyone was talking about, and this is actually something that I think is a little comical. People talking about how Trey Lance was going to win that game against Denver. Now, Trey Lance might have been able to hit Debo on one or both of those throws. He also might have thrown the ball into the third row, because Trey Lance right now, we cannot speak to his accuracy. His arm strength is there, but he does not, like, to me, the consistency of Trey, like, does not compute. Like, I don't fully expect him to be able to make that throw, just as you don't expect Jimmy Garoppolo to be able to make that throw. So I don't see how people can say that Trey Lance, as a starting quarterback, would have won that game. I do think that with more repetitions, Garoppolo will hit that pass enough. Like, I mean, his first week, he was able to find Dwelly on a pass that Trey Lance could not make the week before. Like, I think those type of throws will be there enough for the offense to score at a rate that they need to win football games enough to get to the playoffs. Like and maybe it's 1 out of every 3, but it's not going to be 0 of 2 or 0 of 4 like we saw against Denver. Like, to me, that was the bottom of the barrel as far as Jimmy Garoppolo is concerned, and we're all being a little bit of a prisoner of the moment.
We probably are, and I hear you about Trey Lance, and we're not really sure, how his accuracy is and if he would have hit those throws. But one thing that I think I can say for certain is that Trey Lance is going to let it rip and trust his arm more often than Jimmy Garoppolo. Maybe that trust is misplaced. Maybe he shouldn't trust his arm as much as he does. You can make that case. I'm not going to make that case right now, but I would say Trey Lance trusts his arm and his ability to make those big throws down the field more than Jimmy Garoppolo. And this is for a quarterback who's young, who has started 4 games at the NFL level. Maybe he'll soon realize next year when he gets in games again, hey, I can't make those throws as often as I could. I will, stop making those throws and, take those chances a little less often. But the thing that I like about Trey Lance, and I think this was kind of, pushed down, buried underneath the surface because of the way Kyle Shanahan called plays for him through his first 5 quarters this season, is that he does trust his arm. He will let it fly down the field. And I guarantee you, one, he would have saw Deebo Samuel, even if the first read was a George Kittle out, he would have seen Deebo Samuel streaking down the right sideline, and without hesitation, he would have made the throw. Now, as you mentioned, it could have went into the 3rd row, but I would rather my quarterback take a throw to a wide open streaking receiver down the field and miss him than throw somewhere else. It's worth the risk because there's almost no risk. The worst thing is it falls incomplete on a guy that wide open. So, maybe Jimmy Garoppolo turns down a wide open receiver down the field. Maybe he doesn't see him and he goes to the flat and gets 7 yards. Congratulations, 7 yards. But I want my quarterback going for it all. And I think despite the fact that what we know about Trey Lance is relatively small still, we don't know a lot about him. I feel pretty confident in saying that he would be taking those shots. And in a Kyle Shanahan offense that consistently schemes up receivers open 15, 20 yards down the field, I think that leads to more points for the 49ers. And I'll go against you. I think they win that game if Trey Lance is the starter.
I mean, maybe they do. Trey Lance probably doesn't walk out of bounds. I don't know. I mean, maybe he takes a, I don't know, maybe he takes a sack. Maybe he gets, maybe he fumbles. I mean, there's a lot of, I don't want to make this a hypothetical about Trey Lance. I feel terrible for the guy that he doesn't get a chance to prove me wrong or prove you right or prove what everyone thinks about him or Jimmy G. But I just feel like it's a little unfair for people to force everything on Garoppolo. And maybe this is where we transition to your defense of Kyle Shanahan, because to me, there's as much to do about the play calling and the sort of bland vanilla ice cream that we've seen the first game for Garoppolo, that, to be quite honest, we've seen for the first 3 weeks for the San Francisco 49ers, although they've had 2 different quarterbacks already. He finally gets his tight end 1 back. You got Deebo Samuel, you got Brandon Ayuk. And after the first quarter, it looked like Kyle Shanahan had a playbook about as deep as the shallow end of a pool. Like he went 3 feet into his bag when he's got 6 feet of tricks. Now, maybe some of that is he didn't trust Jimmy Garoppolo to be able to make a throw because he didn't hit Deebo on the one that was open. He didn't even look at Deebo on an opening down the field. But shouldn't you be able to trust your quarterback who's been there for 6 years? I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo is not the same version as the one that came over from the Patriots, but isn't the reason why you have a scheme to get guys open so that you trust your quarterback to be able to deliver the football? It's his first game back, but from what I saw, Kyle Shanahan, not only in the passing game, but also in the running game, was not as creative as advertised. You take out the Jeff Wilson Jr. 30-plus yard run, they're at about 2.5 yards per carry. And that's before Trent Williams goes down. I understand after everything changes because of how important Trent is in the offensive line. But to me, there was not enough consistency in the running game. And so Denver doesn't have to. I mean, like they're saying, sure, Jimmy beat us over the top and he didn't do it early. But to me, Kyle Shanahan, that doesn't mean you have to go away from him. I'm not saying you take 40-yard bombs or, but it looked like the 49ers were trying to kill the Broncos with death by 1,000 cuts by using a butter knife. And that's not going to win you games, even if your offense has a explosive day. Like, even if you're in the 20s, which they haven't really been. I mean, we talked about this last time. They're 28th in points right now. They have not been able to score with Trey Lance or now with Jimmy Garoppolo. I think that does come down to who's under center, but even more so, who is calling the plays.
I think I agree with you in terms of the run game. I think it's gotten a little predictable. It's still a tough, run game to defend, just, the way that the zone scheme works. And, Kyle Shanahan admitted as much on Monday, specifically about the Deebo Samuel runs, that, they're not surprising anyone with those anymore. Like, everyone knows they're coming. And generally, when you see Deebo Samuel in the backfield, it means he's probably going to get the ball. Now, he's still good enough that he could turn that into a big gain, but the element of surprise is gone, at least from that portion of the run game. And I mean, the Niners are down two of their better running backs. So I agree that the play calling in the run game has gotten a little stale. I would also say there are other issues, injury issues, that are probably affecting that as well. However, where I disagree with you is in the passing game. There's a great compilation of the all 22 footage put up on Twitter by Kyle Posey at KP_show of Niners Nation. And you can see some of these when you're watching the game live on Sunday night, but it's just, play after play after play of a open Niner receiver 10 or 15 yards down the field, generally over the middle of the field, that Garoppolo doesn't see and doesn't throw to. The first one is on the first drive of the game. I believe it was a 3rd down and about 8. And it was the first target for George Kittle, who ran just a simple comeback on the left side of the formation. But Brandon Ayuk ran a skinny post on the right. Deebo Samuel was out in the flat on the right side to take that corner away from Brandon Ayuk. And Ayuk just cut back towards the middle part of the field and was wide open about 15 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. Garoppolo threw to Kittle. It was knocked down by former Niner DJ Jones at the line of scrimmage. Probably a good thing, too, because Kittle was double covered, and it could have been a pick six if it got all the way towards the intended target. That's just one example. There are a number of others that were put up on this compilation by Kyle Posey. I do suggest taking a look at it if you're interested in that all 22 footage and just seeing how this offense and Kyle Shanahan's play calling is still scheming guys open. It's just the limitations of this quarterback are such that either he doesn't see them, or he doesn't trust his arm to make the throw, or he tries to make the throw and can't put it on his guy. Maybe he gets 15 yards instead of 30, 45, or a house call. I think it's dangerous to say that Kyle Shanahan's passing game play calling has gotten worse, because I think the evidence is there to suggest that it is as good as ever, but simply his quarterback can't make the plays. Now, you could say, well, Kyle, the limitations of your starting quarterback. Maybe try to do something that he can do. But my God, if your quarterback can't make a simple throw to a crossing receiver 20 yards over the middle of the field, then I'm sorry. It's not the head coach's fault. That is a throw that every NFL quarterback should make. It's a throw that most college quarterbacks can make. And maybe this is something that all fixes itself in a couple of weeks when Jimmy Garoppolo gets more comfortable as the starting quarterback. But I'm sorry, the way that Kyle Shanahan called this game, the Niners should have scored way, way, way more than 10 points. And, the guy that deserves the most blame for that is not Kyle Shanahan. It's Jimmy Garoppolo. Fair or not, it is Jimmy Garoppolo.